that?
Yeah, Van Til and Schaeffer. It's a striking conversation. I feel they had a lot more in common than they had in difference. The earlier followers of Van Til drew the lines for that discussion in ways that I think were largely meant to exclude. They saw differences in Schaeffer. Schaeffer was not one who would parrot Van Til's language, for example. Schaeffer was out and about, mixing it up with folks who had not been in the seminary classroom, who weren't necessarily idealist, and didn't use that idealist vocabulary of Van Til's. So Schaeffer just simply was not trying to be slavish to Van Til. And I think that caused, or at least helped, to see Schaeffer as doing something quite different, or as Schaeffer getting Van Til wrong. My own sense is that Schaeffer simply had a different project. Inside L'Abri, Schaeffer often made L'Abri staff read Van Til. Inside L'Abri, many L'Abri workers use Van Til and are very presuppositional in their approach and read Schaeffer that way. In discussions, Schaeffer and Van Til would often kind of fet each other with kind comments and activities, and Dick Hayes recalls the story of showing Schaeffer's video series at Westminster in Philadelphia, and Van Til just loving it and lapping it up. The idea that Schaeffer and Van Til are opposites, there is so little evidence for. My sense is, and it's only my sense, is that Schaeffer took the nuts and bolts of Van Til and ran with it in the real world. That's not to discount Van Til, it's not to put him in the ivory tower, but I think Schaeffer was exposed to a larger number of men and women from outside the Christian faith, and particularly when he was in Europe, engaging issues and questions that hadn't quite surfaced in America yet. And that forced Schaeffer to think on his feet, not to offer stock answers, and to modify what he was taught by Van Til. I also do think, to be fair to Van Til and to Van Til's followers, Schaeffer was also trying to moderate Buswell. Buswell and Van Til were out here. I think Schaeffer was trying to cobble together some rapprochement there of mentors and friends. And that led to modifications of Van Til that are not very presuppositional. But I think some good work on that. Bill Edgar wrote a fine paper looking at Van Til and Schaeffer that I think he really has sold me that Schaeffer is a modified presupposition. There are some real differences, but nowhere near as many as we've been led to believe.